Hey there, internet friends, and welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions. If you like the show, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Joining me today, we have Logan Wilkinson. How you doing, Logan?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing all right in my brand new abode that you can see in the background of the video version here, and also joining us, Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
What is going on? I specifically introduced Logan first in case you wanted to have that extra beat to like think
Nope.
up a Star
None.
Wars specific thing.
Not this
Cam?
time. Not this
that's-
time around.
That's fair.
Not feeling it.
So yes,
we'll get into that.
All right. So today we're going to be talking all about Star Wars: Tales of the Jedi, the newest, apart from the ongoing Andor series, the newest thing from the Star Wars Disney universe. We're going to be talking about all 6 episodes: Life and Death, Justice, Choices, The Sith Lord, Practice Makes Perfect, and Resolve. Why do we pick it? Because Star Wars is fun, and it's always a fun thing to sit down and discuss with y'all. So, yeah. This was originally released October 26th, 2022. So that's another reason we didn't get to cover it during our Halloween month because we were still finishing up with The Simpsons that week, and then we wanted to wrap up She-Hulk last week, and so now we're able to get around to this one. Episodes have a runtime of about 15 minutes per episode. In the Star Wars animated timeline of things, we had The Bad Batch Season 1 from May through August of 2021. And we had Star Wars Visions Volume 1. We didn't know it was Volume 1 at the time, but it has since been announced that we're going to get a Volume 2. That was September 22nd of last year. And then we didn't really have anything on the animation side, unless you count Lego Star Wars, which I don't for this category and grouping. But we had Tales from the Jedi, October 26th. Bad Batch Season 2 is launching in January of next year, starting January 4th. And Star Wars... There you go. And Star Wars Visions Volume 2 is currently TBD, but it was officially announced at Star Wars Celebration this year, and will be kind of branching out to other animation departments around the world, whereas Visions was obviously very Japanese anime specific. This one's they're gonna kind of take it a little bit different directions. So yeah, and then also I guess we also had, just as of today, we had a Studio Ghibli announcement that I don't know if that's going to be involved with Volume 2 or if they're just going to be doing their own Star Wars thing. We will see when the time comes, I guess.
Ghibli's relationship with Disney is long-standing enough that it would make sense if they wanted to do their own thing. They totally could.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because, and I don't know, I imagine this is still the case, but I don't know. But I remember when Kind of Funny did Studio Ghibli in review. That was all on HBO Max, which is Warner Brothers Discovery now. So I'm like, oh, I wonder if that's still the case. If I could still go and watch all the Ghibli movies there. But yeah,
I'm not sure. I do know that for a long time the distribution partner for Ghibli movies was Disney, but I don't know at what point in time that changed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It might still be that they're the distribution partner. It might just be that that like Warner Brothers, HBO, whoever just paid a butt ton of money for it. Who knows?
Entirely possible, yeah. Because if they didn't really have a place for, I don't know. That's a bit odd. Well, I know that. So I guess their theatrical distribution partner is Disney.
Yeah.
Normally, because they used to partner with you know what though? No, because didn't Miramax get? Because Miramax's stuff is on HBO, isn't it?
I don't know, and also I'll just kind of cut this off, and we'll just like detour it, and we
Sure.
can look into
Sorry.
it at our
Sorry.
own will. We don't.
That is a
It's a tangent.
very
Yeah, we don't
yeah.
need to
That's a
dive
very
into.
me tangent. I apologize.
No, that's all good. Diving into our roll call here, we have 3 directors over the course of these 6 episodes. Saul Ruiz directed most of them. They directed Justice, The Sith Lord, Practice Makes Perfect, and Resolve. Previously, they've worked on as director of 12 episodes of Rebels, 6 episodes of Star Wars Resistance, 4 episodes of The Clone Wars, and 6 episodes of The Bad Batch. We also had Nathaniel Villanueva, directed Life and Death, previously directing 4 episodes of The Clone Wars and 6 episodes of The Bad Batch. And lastly, Charles Murray directed Choices. Few miscellaneous directorial projects here and there, but nothing that I could find Star Wars centric. This is kind of their debut in the Star Wars landscape. Dave Filoni was the writer on all of these except Choices. Of course, Dave Filoni being basically the creative head at Lucasfilm right now, having previously written 13 episodes of Rebels, 10 episodes of Clone Wars, 2 episodes of The Mandalorian, 1 episode of The Bad Batch, 1 episode of The Book of Boba Fett, and the upcoming Ahsoka, at least the pilot of Ahsoka. Charles Murray, who wrote Choices, previously worked on, also directed Choices. He wrote previously Sons of Anarchy, a few episodes of that. He did also write on 2 episodes of Rebels, as well as 8 episodes of Clone Wars, but this was his directorial debut in Star Wars stuff. And then lastly, Elan Murray also wrote on Choices. This is their writing debut. Starring, we have Corey Burton in here as Count Dooku. Actually, I guess potentially just Dooku. I don't know if he's a count in any of these episodes. But Corey Burton, we've discussed on That D Plus show in the past. Known for voices like Dale and Zipper in Rescue Rangers, Ansem the Wise, Yen Sid, and Captain Hook in Kingdom Hearts. Dooku among Star Wars things, as well as Cad Bane and Zero the Hutt. He was Zeus in the God of War franchise, and just because I've been playing this recently, he is Hugo Strange in Arkham City. Ashley Eckstein playing Ahsoka Tano, has been Ahsoka since 2008. D. Bradley Baker playing Captain Rex and other miscellaneous clone troopers. As I always like to highlight whenever he's mentioned on the show, he's also the voice of Olmec from Legends of the Hidden Temple. He was Daffy Duck in Space Jam, Klaus in American Dad, and he's been the voice of the clone troopers since the Clone Wars in 2008. Ian McDiarmid makes a cameo in here as Darth Sidious, who of course has been Sheev Palpatine all the way back since Return of the Jedi in 1983, even though IMDb will also credit him for the Empire Strikes Back because of the remastered cuts.
Yeah.
Yep. Matt Lanter as Anakin Skywalker, been voicing the animated Anakin since the Clone Wars in 2008. Mikhail Richardson plays young Qui-Gon Jinn in the first Dooku story. Has worked on miscellaneous projects, but is also the real-life son of Liam Neeson.
Sounds a lot like his dad.
Yep.
Indeed. And
Yep.
and in the later episode, Liam Neeson does also come back and plays Qui-Gon Jinn. Liam Neeson, of course, from projects like Schindler's List, Phantom Menace, Taken, and Men in Black International. James.
Literally a like master of the silver screen.
Indeed, yes. Like I almost wrote Taken and then all of the other Taken-like movies. But yes. James Arnold Taylor in here as Obi-Wan Kenobi, also known as the voice of Ratchet from Ratchet and Clank, Tidus from Final Fantasy X, and he's been voicing Obi-Wan since at least 2008. Terrence T.C. Carson voices Mace Windu. He was Kratos in the original God of War games, and has been the voice in Clone Wars universe of Mace Windu since 2008. Janina Gavankar playing Pavti, aka Ahsoka's mother, having been in projects like True Blood, Far Cry 4, Iden Versio in Star Wars Battlefront 2. She's also voiced in Horizon Zero Dawn, After Party, She was in the shows Big Sky and The Morning Show, and she will be in the upcoming Forspoken game, as well as the Borderlands movie. Clancy Brown as the Inquisitor. I will always think of him as his role in Shawshank Redemption, but he's also been in Starship Troopers, of course, SpongeBob SquarePants, and hundreds of other credits out there, including many, many other Star Wars credits. He's kind of been a catch-all in across many of the Star Wars projects. And lastly, Bryce Dallas Howard playing Yaddle, of course, having been featured in the Jurassic World series, as well as a featured director on The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett shows. Diving into some trivia. As we typically do when there's a Star Wars centric thing, I pull in they have a bad feeling about this section. I don't think there were any in this. Not that I caught, at least.
Not that I caught.
As I was rewatching
There's none.
it.
I didn't hear any.
Yeah.
I watched it yesterday. I didn't hear any of them.
Yeah. In the galactic timeline of things, we're kind of all over the map on this, and some of these I don't have any kind of like definitive placement. But Life and Death takes place circa 36/35 BBY. Ahsoka Tano is canonically born in 36 BBY, so that's when that happens, and then her hunt is a year later. Justice and Choices occur effectively sometime between 68 BBY and roughly 40 BBY. In 68 BBY,
nice window there.
Yeah, exactly. And some of this is also like I'm pulling just off of the Star Wars timeline on Wikipedia, but
Right.
like these also retcon various elements, so some of that is very much out of date, one of which I will touch on in a little bit. But in 68 BBY, that is when Qui-Gon Jinn is made an apprentice to Master Dooku. And then in 40 BBY, Master Windu is offering Qui-Gon a seat on the council, but Qui-Gon turns it down to eventually go on to train Obi-Wan and whatnot. So sometime within that window is where we obviously have those episodes occurring. The Sith Lord takes place, of course, in 32 BBY alongside the events of The Phantom Menace. We have Practice Makes Perfect occurring in the Clone Wars era, so between 22 and 19 BBY. And then finally, Resolve occurs obviously sometime between Order 66 and 19 BBY, and later the most recent or latest thing that Ahsoka pops back up in is Rebels in 4 BBY, when Vader dispatches the fifth brother and seventh sister to hunt down Ahsoka Tano, Kanan Jarrus, and Ezra Bridgers. So sometime between 19 and 4 BBY are when we get Ahsoka on a farm.
That also takes place in the Ahsoka book.
In the Ahsoka book, yeah. But even like
novel.
that's
yeah,
that's another thing.
Yeah.
There's some light retconning between the Ahsoka book and that episode.
Yeah, there's some serious retconning that happens
all over the place.
Yeah.
I have a number of them here in the trivia that we will dive into. But before that, Little Ahsoka is used as a nickname by Ahsoka's father in the Life and Death episode, which ties into the same nickname later given to her and used by her surrogate Jedi father Plo Koon after she is recruited into the Jedi Order as a 2-year-old. The Sith Lord episode confirms that Dooku deleted the Camino data, posing as Master Sifo Dyas around the time of the Boonta Eve Classic, aka when Qui-Gon Jinn first encounters Darth Maul on Tatooine. Originally, in the expanded universe, Master Yaddle died absorbing a deadly chemical weapon on the planet Mawan, sacrificing herself in order to save the citizens of the planet. This took place in between The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones originally. However, following the Disney acquisition, kind of the legendsifying effect of some of those older stories, she simply retired after the Battle of Naboo and was not seen again until the Sith Lord here, revealing her new fate, struck down at the hands of Dooku shortly following. And because I was like, wait, does this contradict what's in The Phantom Menace? Like, is she in the funeral at the end of Phantom Menace? She is not. I went back and rewatched, and yep, no, she is not there. Other Jedi are there, including like Mace Windu and Yoda and stuff, but she is no longer present. So yeah, they this fits with the existing canon now. Similarly, in prior canon, Dooku left the Jedi Order and claimed the title of Count of Sereno in 42 BBY, 1 year before Anakin Skywalker was born. This obviously is clearly retconned here as well, since he was still out and about in 32 BBY.
That in and of itself has been that has been like a contentious point within the fandom for a very long time.
What is
contradictory? There's contradictory information because there's other stuff that's that has stated like canon sources that stated that he retired and left the Jedi Order after Qui-Gon's death, and that like he had like known of Anakin Skywalker at the time of his retirement when he retreated to. There's a whole lot that is a Dooku's entire like history with canon has been troubled.
Yeah.
Ever since his introduction.
Yeah. Tying back to Yaddle, because I realized I like inserted the Dooku thing in there in between. But Yaddle obviously does not speak like Yoda speaks. Dave Filoni has confirmed that Yoda's way of speaking is not inherent to that species, but rather Yoda is honoring the way that his old master spoke. And so that's why Yoda speaks the way Yoda speaks, apparently. When Ahsoka is being tested at the opening of Practice Makes Perfect, a young Caleb Doom, aka Kanan Jarrus, can be seen alongside his master Depa Billaba.
That was a great little thing there.
Yeah, that was like even before I'll also point out like most of this trivia I just kind of pulled from like doing my own research. There wasn't a ton to draw from in terms of the IMDb stuff. But yeah, that was one I caught and I was like, hey, I had the whole Leonardo DiCaprio meme pointing kind of thing. And yeah, this was one where I did a bit of digging here, and this might be what you were alluding to earlier, Cameron. Ahsoka's alibi in Resolve, Ashla, was the character's original name during Clone Wars development before Lucas changed it to Ahsoka. It was also used in the 2016 novel while Ahsoka was in hiding, similar to the events of this episode. Episode and novel, however, are at odds in some elements, leading to suggest that the novel is now more of a Legends-type story, particularly. There's controversy surrounding the fact that the farming brother and sister pair that Ahsoka helps in the novel are black siblings, with the sister, Caden Larte, being a queer black woman who develops romantic feelings for Ashla. In the show, however, fans are arguing that they have been whitewashed, even though the now nameless siblings are both voiced by actors of color. So it definitely kind of feels like they probably intended at some point with going more in the direction of the book, and then some kind of changes were made to make the characters white, I guess. Yeah, I read a whole think piece on that, and I was like, oh, this is a thing I did not know about. And I think a lot of your opinion on that episode is probably going to be fueled by if you know the Ahsoka book or if you don't, because I hadn't read the Ahsoka book beforehand. And I was like, oh, that was fine. That was a fine story. And then kind of reading this and reading like the more complexity elements, especially, obviously every passing year we get more and more better representation, I think, in Star Wars. But this,
agreed,
coming out when it did, the person in particular I was reading about was talking to a point from like they finally saw themselves in Star Wars because of the Ahsoka book. And so it is a shame that some people are feeling alienated by this kind of abbreviated version of kind of the Ahsoka leading into Rebels storyline there. Cam, have you read the Ahsoka book?
I did read it. I don't recall much of it.
Okay.
But I recall like when I was watching that episode, I was like, this is off. Mm-hmm. And also, like, it just solidified some feelings that I have about this. We'll get into into it later, but
that is the last of the trivia I have. So yeah, we can dive in right now.
Cool.
It sounds like you both have some thoughts on this. So Cam, yeah, feel free to kick us off.
Cool. What an absolute dog shit format.
Okay.
Okay, you're stronger than I am.
Here's the thing: I like the format as an idea.
Yeah.
What they did with it, hated it. This would have been better as two, like if you wanted, like it's doing it. let me try to put this in better words and nicer words as well. I love the stories that got to be told. However, the way that these stories were told was so disjointed and felt so weirdly like sequenced out and timed. There were several episodes that honestly I hate that it was this abridged and abrupt. Mostly the Dooku episodes.
Definitely.
The Duke, and like honestly, I would have preferred that they said, "Hey, we're gonna do 2 things of Tales from the Jedi, and it's gonna be like 45 minutes here for Ahsoka, 45 minutes here for Dooku, and they'd be 2 separate specials, and this could be like a kind of like reoccurring thing." 11 minutes is not long enough to tell the intricacies of some of the stories they're trying to tell. And it's extremely frustrating to see, one, I was super turned off by the first episode.
Yep.
It was,
yeah.
If I knew that this was building for like, it's establishing themes and a premise for for a 45-minute long thing, great. Otherwise, why did I watch 10 minutes of baby Ahsoka looking at a saber-toothed tiger alien creature, and then it's a weird way of being like, look how like in tune with the Force Ahsoka was even as a baby. Didn't need that.
Mm-hmm.
I knew how in tune with the Force she was her entire, like, I've watched the Clone Wars, I've watched all this stuff. You try, like, them trying to add additional like mythos, and then the following episode being a stark departure to a story about Dooku and his aggressiveness, but at the same time being founded in the idea of justice, and not justice for the sake of like order and the government, but justice for the sake of people, and getting to see a really awesome, cool side of Dooku, but also seeing how he's very aggressive and very like on the edge at all times as the, kind of like a person, and like his attitude, and how Qui-Gon's deep level of compassion like was such an important impact to his character. Getting to see that played out, where before like we had like very limited amounts of it in like one-off comics and stuff like that about Dooku, and like getting to see that that relationship fleshed out in a much better way, was really cool in a really fun way. But I would have, once again, there's no, like, you're establishing strong character moments in short periods of time. And while I think that like the other episodes with Ahsoka, I think totally nail it as far as like what they're doing with it. As far as like there's certain things about it that I like, that I thought were really good and in tune with Ahsoka's larger story, but it's so disjointed. If you don't know Ahsoka's story, if you don't know Ahsoka's journey, especially after her departure from the Jedi Order, where this is taking place, the last episode, or her training episode takes place in Order, you know, during the point of Order 66, and like why it ties into Ahsoka's relationship with clone troopers and all this stuff, like this deeper layers we don't get if you don't know that history. If you didn't watch that last season of the Clone Wars, especially, you're like, it's very disjointed and out of place. However, I think it does follow through within like a lot of the same themes, and I see where Dave Filoni was going with this, but I just think that this was just such a not great way to handle some really cool and fun and interesting storytelling, that, you know, give an adaptation of the farm story from the Ahsoka book. Do it. Just do it. Don't give us 11 minutes of hyper condensed stuff with now attaching problematic issues to it as well. Be true to it. And also shout out to that Brother Inquisitor's mask being sick as hell. Holy crap, what an awesome, and also like his whole thing being dragging the lightsaber in the sand and like having it catch stuff on fire. Sick as hell. Love that. He's gone in a minute. He's there for a minute and a half. Less than 90 seconds he's on the screen. Like, there's so much more that can be done with it, that could have been done with this, and I just think that it's a massive disservice to the really good storytelling that was going on for it to be so hyper condensed into something so short and not letting certain things breathe. Not like we literally
we'll come back to
yeah.
let's come back to like what breathes, what doesn't breathe. I want to throw it to Logan though and kind of get your general thoughts
sorry,
before we dive in to like the real the nitty gritty of it.
Yeah, I think I don't disagree with Cam on some levels.
I did come in pretty hot.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely the first episode is not a good first episode to start on. But I mean, it's tough for me because I knew coming in that I was probably going to really enjoy the Count Dooku stuff. I think that's a super interesting avenue to explore. And I knew that I probably wasn't going to vibe that much with the Ahsoka stuff. And this sort of solidified this for me, right? Like, I just think I don't vibe with Ahsoka. Like, I just think that is a character that I don't like that much. Like, I don't hate Ahsoka by any means, right? But I just think she's just a character who I don't really like, right? And I think it ties into a lot of my larger issues with Tales of the Jedi, which is that, like, you know, something that all three of us love is Rogue One, right? And I think Rogue One is a story that fleshes out and strengthens what already existed before, right? It makes A New Hope and the original trilogy stronger and better and gives it more depth, right? And I think that the Dooku stories here do that for Dooku, right? And do that mostly successfully, I think, for the prequels at large, just strengthen those stories and make him a more compelling figure, right? And I think they can do that because you have him in the movies and you know where we're going. And so just kind of these like quick vignettes of his life. The issue I think I've always had with Ahsoka is that because she's not in the prequels and she's not in the original trilogy and she's technically not even in the sequel trilogy, that gives, I think, Dave Filoni and company a lot of freedom to do whatever they want with Ahsoka. But I also think that is a little bit of a double-edged sword where it gives them so much freedom that they don't know where to stop sometimes with Ahsoka. And it leads to really weird things happening where it's like, all right, like she's clearly alive in the original trilogy and is just sort of bumming around, I guess, like not really doing anything in like key moments. And like some of the issues I have with like the expanded universe in Star Wars in general is that by the nature of having other Jedi people and forcing people like doing shit, it sort of diminishes the importance of Luke a little bit, where it's like, well, Luke is only so important, you know, not only so important, but like a big part of his importance is that like he is, you know, the last of the Jedi, right? And the guy who helps bring them back and all this other stuff. And it's like, yeah, but if they're like 30 other people who are Jedis as well, just doing their own things, it's a little bit less whatever. But the first episode in particular, like the particular moment for me where I lost it, because I was watching it this morning as I was making breakfast, and when Ahsoka comes riding back into town on top of the saber-toothed tiger, I audibly was just like, all right, fuck this episode. Like, we're like, it's like, all right, like, whatever. Like, this is what we're doing. Fine. Okay, sure. Like, also the image of her getting, like, grabbed by, like, the back of her tiny baby bib and, like, ridden off to begin with. Just like, okay, sure. Like, you know, it's
because those things would not have just sliced through the clothing.
Yeah, it's a super silly, super cheesy moment, and it's very, you know, it is what it is in the first episode. And I think, do I think we need that? No, I think it is pretty clearly the weakest episode of the batch for me. And one that feels the most out of place too, right? Like, I think if you just start this with the first Dooku episode and run through from there and have there be 5 episodes instead of 6, I think this is a tighter package. It flows more in a chronological order. It flows more in sort of a narrative order, like going from Dooku to Qui-Gon to, you know, Obi-Wan, Anakin, Ahsoka, and like that kind of master to mentor thing. I just think it's a better pace to it as well. Because like Cameron said, I think the pacing of these episodes is really funky. And even the first Dooku episode, I like the ideas of it a lot. I think it also leans a lot on really cliche things, and that is sort of my big issue with. I like the idea of getting quick, 15, 20-minute Star Wars episodes, but the problem with that is that they're 15 minutes long, and so if you're trying to tell like a really, I think dense story with lots of stuff going on, you can't really do that in 15 minutes, right? It's got to be pretty super simple stuff. And so a lot of the characters in that first Dooku episode, in particular, the like senator who's just evil to be evil and then is redeemed at the end, and his son who is just like, I had no idea my dad was bad, I'll fix this kind of thing, are like both cliche tropes, but like we've got 15 minutes.
Also, yeah, how's his son supposed to fix it? His dad's the senator,
right? And just like, ignore that, right? And like, but it has really great moments, right? Like I think, like Cameron said, like the moment with Dooku losing it, and then like Qui-Gon being this sort of balance to Dooku, right, and being this sort of compassion, whereas Dooku is so driven by justice that it leads him astray, as we see. I think I really like. If anything, I would have honestly rather that been a stronger through line throughout, right? Like the second episode, I think is really interesting, but I'd have rather that been Dooku and Qui-Gon doing something than Dooku and Mace Windu, because they make Mace Windu be a real fucking lame in that episode, like in a way that like I've like throughout that episode, I'm like, is this what Mace Windu's like? Because that's not what I've pictured in my head for 20 years. Like he's acting like a straight up like
he's a
dork
narc
right now. Yeah,
he's a narc and a cop.
Such a nerd. Yeah, a cop is a great. And it's like
my note for the choices episode is it's the AJAB episode. All Jedi are bad.
And it's just like, all right, this is terrible. But like the way they bring Dooku's story together at the end in that last episode, and his 2-minute long scene with Qui-Gon has so much like going on, and there's so much like powerful moments, so much depth to it, right? And even though we've only had 2 episodes before this, that moment taps into the best parts of stories and going back to characters that we've known for years, right? Where it's like, yeah, it's not just 2 episodes, it's 23, 24 years since Phantom Menace came out, and everything with Qui-Gon and everything with Dooku and everything we know about them. And it's so sad and it's so beautiful. And then, like the final glances they have at each other, and then like for it to immediately cut to that moment at the tree is so good and so powerful. And I just think nothing in any of Ahsoka's 3 episodes come close to any of that, right? And I think part of that is just like they're weird episodes. Like the first one is just sort of a miss. The second one is also, I think, tonally not right, and it's the shortest episode of the entire batch. And I think it suffers from that. And then the last one, I think, is the most interesting for me of Ahsoka's 3, but is still not as like emotionally resonant or strong as Dooku's episodes.
Yeah, I'm largely of, I think, the same mind as you. I don't think I'm as hot as either of you. I very much kind of walk away from this like I don't
hate the episodes.
Yeah, I really like the Dooku stuff, and the Ahsoka stuff was fine.
Yeah.
For me, and just because you guys have already kind of touched on the first episode being like the weakest of the batch, I agree. And like I said, I think before we started recording, I rewatched all but that episode right before we started recording, just so it was like all fresh in my mind. Because that episode, I watched and I was like, I don't think we needed that, especially because like there are beats of it that I'm like, I feel like I've seen this over and over again. Most recently in Star Wars with like Grogu in like the Mandalorian season 1, kind of like, oh, he tames the beast, or he tames the Rancor even in Book of Boba Fett. It's like, okay, that's cool. We didn't need that for Ahsoka. And for me, it's almost the inverse of Visions, because they're like, I found myself thinking, like there are a lot of like Visions elements of this, of like, hey, let's tell short stories that are kind of like, outside the beaten path kind of thing. And like the first episode of Visions, I think blew us all away with the very Kurosawa, like, very stark grays, white, black palette, and then you only see red, or you only see little hints of color here and there. And it was like one of the most engaging and most like eye-catching and interesting things. Whereas this one kind of starts with this Ahsoka episode. It's like, okay, and then doesn't really tie into anything else. I also found myself, especially on a rewatch, the second episode, i.e. the first Dooku episode, like landing on this like burnt down farming town with like the same droids that we get in the later episode with Ashla, like
Hmm.
they're trying and failing to lift a hay bale. I was almost like surprised then that we don't get some kind of like weird full circle
Yeah.
confirmation that like Ahsoka is on the same planet and now it's being ruled by the sun or something, and you know, in a better place or something. And maybe that did exist in some kind of like early fashion. It seems, because it just seems weird that like they give us like establishing shot of this burnt down farm and these robots, and then we see those same robots and kind of hay bale stuff later on.
Droids, yeah.
But yeah, it like I liked the format overall still of like short little 15-minute stories, 10-minute stories, whatever. I don't think it would have worked in a longer form thing, because I think it would have suffered from the Clone Wars movie effect that we all kind of were like, this just feels like three very disparate stories. And especially on the Dooku side of things, the points in time that they're kind of like hopping into, I don't think work as a like, I think it worked as episodic storytelling to give you like, here are moments in Dooku's journey that led him down the path that he ultimately goes down. And I don't think that would have worked as like a full length Dooku, or even like a, you know, an hour long Dooku feature, because it would have still just felt like disjointed, like we're looking and seeing at moments, as opposed to like just one solid through line. But I enjoyed it because it very much is like, I think Logan, I think maybe you touched on, like we don't get this much of Dooku in the original prequels and stuff. And so I think this series very much serves to flesh him out. Whereas if you've watched Rebels and Clone Wars, you've gotten a lot of Ahsoka, and there's not a ton more in terms of like stuff to add. So the few stories that we get of Ahsoka here are like, okay, that did feel superfluous, because we've spent so much other time with that character.
I think,
yeah.
I'm just going to add on to that. Like, I think Dooku in particular is really interesting because even in the prequel trilogy, he is by far, I think, in Star Wars, the most nuanced bad guy we ever get in any of the actual movies, right? Like, Kylo Ren is just a straight up nut job in half of his films. And then Vader is just pure evil, right? He's literally the personification of evil. Emperor is a cartoon villain. Darth Maul is a cartoon villain who doesn't speak at all, right? General Grievous, literally a cartoon character. And then Dooku here, you have like this like old Shakespearean sounding like guy who in his two films is just like so different than anything else happening on screen and isn't a physical force that you're like terrified of, but it's almost the fact that like he just seems like he's smarter than anyone else in any room he's in at all times. Like he's mapped it out like 4 steps ahead, right? In particular, like that scene with him, Anakin and Obi-Wan in like the fight at the end of Attack of the Clones, it's so clear that he has mapped all this out and knows exactly how it's going to go before they've even got there, right? Like he's so confident. And the only thing that even somewhat rattles him is Yoda getting there, right? But otherwise he's in complete control of that situation. And to kind of see his arc and to see his journey, and the fact that like even within the prequels we get those like, you know, subtle line drops of like he was a Jedi who went bad, and that being an idea that wasn't really explored before in Star Wars. You know, we found out about Vader basically 2/3 through that sequel. It's a bit different, right? And so here it's like, no, from the jump of this guy, he's like, he was a Jedi, he's not bad, they don't think he's evil. They just think he's trying to like do his own movement to like make the Republic better, and then how they discover what's going on. And then to see that played out here and see his motivations, and like Cameron said, like it isn't just like I want power, I'm a bad guy. It's like he genuinely thinks that, you know, the Jedi have gone astray and the Republic and Senate have gone astray, and like people are suffering. The fact that we see him see that suffering multiple times to get to that point by the time we get to the Sith Lord episode, I think is really great. And I love his little, you know, moment of internal conflict when he's in the hangar with Darth Sidious, right? And they're having their conversation, and you can see him not sure what to do. And I love, you know, Palpatine in the bleachers just like keep like throwing out these like one-liners to be like, you're a bad guy, do bad things, killer kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I just think it's such a cool way to watch Dooku's turn. And I think also maybe the best explanation for someone going from the light to dark side we've had in Star Wars, right? Like, because Anakin's ultimately is messy, we'll say at best. His turn and how it's executed. Kylo Ren's, I think, is just bad. His explanation, it could have been settled over like a cup of coffee with him and Luke. But here it like makes sense why he would be led astray from the Jedi Order and why he would go to the Sith and why he's kind of doing these things. And I think the death of Qui-Gon, despite the fact that that was pretty clearly orchestrated by Palpatine, is also sort of the final straw that pushes him away from the Order because he feels like they didn't support Qui-Gon, because they feel like they didn't support, his Padawan, and also because he's just so filled with grief, I think, in that moment that he is just sort of blinded by everything else. Like, I totally bought his final turn there in a way that didn't ring as true for Anakin and didn't ring as true for Kylo Ren.
Yep. Ken, go ahead, jump in.
Yeah. I really want to echo a lot of what Logan said about Dooku's episodes. I felt like Dooku, as somebody who it is a great character who has seen the inside, been on the inside, tried to be the change that they want to see within the inside, and then have the institutions fail them.
Yeah.
The institutions that they
just
have
ignore
believed
them,
in,
right?
Yeah, and just absolutely fail him, fail everyone around him. There is a very great set of sequences that one I will love until the day I die. The introduction in Attack of the Clones that Count Dooku, when he confronts Obi-Wan, he says, I know all about you, Obi-Wan. Like, your master told me.
That's so good.
And he goes, and it's that internalized, really interesting thing of this lineage of masters to apprentices.
Yeah.
And this very messy, complicated groups of relationships between these people. But at the core center of them is how much they all care and love each other. And you have Dooku, who it's very clear is being an inside man for Darth Sidious at this point. This is what I said at the top of the podcast, Count Dooku's history and like where things land for him is an absolute mess within even pre-Disney bought out canon in Legends. There's several contradictions within it. And so I completely buy into, and like we get it set up perfectly. Like, this is a guy who no longer believes in the Jedis as an institution. But he believes that there's still like good people in them. And it is until his apprentice is killed and he does, of course, what I love is he goes to Sidious and he says, Darth Maul killed Qui-Gon. Like, this wasn't part of the plan. Like, and Sidious being like, it's too far in. Like, what did you expect? Like, this is the cause, man. This
also
is the
line,
movement,
like, he
brother.
Could have helped us, and Palpatine being like, helped you.
I
like
help
as well.
you.
That's I love the hint there of like Palpatine very afraid that Dooku would have brought Qui-Gon in and the two of them would have taken out Sidious.
Yep.
Yeah, it was very much a nice little nod to the rule of two and all that stuff.
The rule of two, but also on top of that, I also think I've read and watched several videos and read several think pieces of how Qui-Gon's character, as it's established in the films as well as like additional canon, was basically a singular antithesis to a lot of the council's decisions in regards to like their decisions to basically put Palpatine in power, because everybody was so concerned about the future, nobody was in the moment. And that's something that they establish super heavily in in the second episode, is Dooku is about to commit a serious, I don't think it's called federal, but a serious federal crime in murdering a senator.
A galactic crime.
Yeah, galactic crime of literally killing a senator. And like not unjustifiably. Like, you know,
It was in self-defense. Yeah.
it was in self-defense completely. And so like Dooku's totally justified, but in the moment Qui-Gon is looking at this and he sees all the pieces kind of come together, and he makes, and it, you know, you can like I as somebody who like loves Qui-Gon Jinn and has read a lot of stuff, it's like, yep, he's a Jedi, he's internalizing, saying like, what do I need to do in this moment? Not how do I get the outcome that I want by manipulating visions of the future, but what am I supposed to be doing here in this moment? And he makes that decision to go, gets the sun, and it's not Qui-Gon that technically stops Dooku's lightsaber from hitting the senator and killing him. It's the sun getting in the way. It's this and that immediately all of a sudden this I'm a mean badass like corrupt senator, all of that falls apart. Because all of a sudden it's what a lot of like not great guys say, especially like, you know, mobsters and everything, when they've insulated their children and then their children find out who their parents really are, and like the absolute devastation that comes into it. Like it's a well practiced throughout, like narrative wise. A great example of it is The Sopranos. Breaking Bad is another great one, when Walt Jr. like talks to his father after finding out everything for the first time, and like that conversation just like absolutely destroys Walt on a lot of levels. Yeah. And it's great. Like it's so well done, and so it's a great character moment for these characters who we've had very brief moments before, but we do get a lot of catharsis in that moment of like, Dad, these are these are our people. How could you do this to them? And the dad just being like, oh no, I am the bad guy. I
think that's where these do suffer from like the length, is that you don't get an end to that story. You get the end to Dooku and Qui-Gon of, okay, they've resolved the situation they were sent to resolve. They're going to go off and do a thing. And so, yeah, the fact that like we don't see like how that pays out, I think if this had been like a Clone Wars episode, that's what we would have seen or something like that. Obviously, like the Dooku stuff also couldn't exist within the Clone Wars episodes, which is why they have to kind of exist in this story.
So let me
go ahead and finish your
getting that, and then seeing Qui-Gon, or not Qui-Gon, seeing Dooku have to like be civil with people who are basically trashing Qui-Gon. When he's in the library, he's talking to the librarian, and she goes, your apprentice says that he saw a Sith Lord. And it's like, you know, quite the imagination on him. And it's like, lady, you're the librarian. Like,
shut up,
you aren't even a
Costa
real Jedi. You aren't even a real Jedi. Like, I literally just deleted a planet and all the records on this planet, and nobody's going to know about it for years. You're bad at your job. On top of that, anyway, it's just that moment when he has that snide line, he goes, yeah, if only more Jedi had that, a trait less Jedi have more and more. Like, yeah, like clearly
something to the effect of like, that's seen less and less in around these parts, like the creative mind or whatever.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's once again, it's Dooku. Basically, like, it's a great moment for establishing his character. And then I want to get into Yaddle. Yaddle is done such a disservice.
Real quick before we dive into Yaddle, I will go ahead and I do want to I want to touch on something I think kind of both of you have touched on a little bit. I do think that the choice of Ahsoka and Dooku as like the two tails of the Jedi that we're seeing here does fit thematically. Because I think we do get like both of them over the course of their stories are disenfranchised with the Jedi Order. Problem is, we don't get that from Ahsoka in this. We get that from Ahsoka in the Clone Wars, specifically the later seasons, when she leaves the Jedi Order to set up why she's not in Revenge of the Sith, of course. So like it's cool to see that like Dooku had the similar like revelations of like, oh yeah, like we are supposed to be here for the peace, but we're just puppets of the Senate. We're not serving the people, we're serving the Senate. And if we, are too slavish to those rules, you get the Mace Windu that is presented here, which I also agree doesn't really seem to match the Mace Windu we see for a lot of the stuff. But also, how much of that is us projecting Samuel L. Jackson onto Mace Windu?
That's the problem.
Versus,
I had that thought.
Like, Mace Windu also just total narc energy and really boring guy in episodes 1 and 2 in particular.
You're right.
Yeah.
He doesn't get spicy and interesting till episode 3. I will agree with you on that.
But yeah, I think like thematically it's really cool to see those two journeys, but we've already seen the thematic pairing of Ahsoka's journey in her own story elsewhere, and we don't really get that like flourished or advanced here. Whereas if they had told kind of those Ahsoka moments or found a way to tie those Ahsoka beats into the journey that Dooku is going on here, and kind of like, yeah, here's the two paths that these two kind of people like both went down. One turned left, one turned right. I think it could have been like really interesting, but yeah, it is a weird format in that front because we've already had those Ahsoka stories. So it is like, okay, would this have been better served with other Jedi stories? Right. And or,
maybe a story of Ahsoka when she is out, like after she's been ousted out of the Jedi Order.
Yeah.
Like, like that would have been instead of the weird abusive
like
training.
The last season of Clone Wars. So yeah.
Yeah, that is true. That is also very true.
Which is so again, yeah, we've already gotten those stories from Ahsoka. And so it is weird that we like and going back to the whole framework of like, yeah, the one episode that is like baby Ahsoka, and then the rest of the episodes are chronological, certainly. But yeah, the 3 Dooku episodes and then 2 more Ahsoka ones to wrap things up. It is like, why was that a thing? Also, one last thing that I just want to throw out there before we dive into Yaddle stuff. The one thing that does stick out to me from the first episode is the mom basically saying like, remember, like, respect all life right before she goes on a hunt to kill a deer.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah,
I also
like,
the same
I was like,
and not even like we need it for food. It's a ritualistic killing.
Yeah.
That is performed by parent and child.
Yeah.
Like that alone also is very weird.
Yeah. I was like, this. I don't
respect all life. Let's go murder a creature.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, we can cycle back to Yaddle if you want to give some thoughts on Yaddle. Unless Logan, do you have anything else you want to kind of jump in on first before we? I think Yaddle will probably be like the last big topic. So anything before we wrap up with that?
I mean, I like the fact that Cameron earlier had talked about the lineage of the various masters and Padawans, because not so much the sequel trilogy, because that's just kind of a garbage fire in terms of like a narrative through line, but certainly the prequel and original trilogy, there, when you kind of get to the end of it and watch all 6 of these movies, there is this really interesting line of like masters who in some ways failed their Padawans, and like it's kind of an interesting study of like inner like generational trauma in some ways in Star Wars, right? Of like the like, issues that Count Dooku had on Qui-Gon Jinn ripple through to Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, which then ripples out into kind of the tragic death early of Qui-Gon and how that deeply affects Obi-Wan and also Anakin and their super intense and emotional filled relationship that obviously has a fracture point, and then you have Obi-Wan and Luke, and so you get in like 4 different generations of people that all stems back to Dooku and Qui-Gon, and then at the top of all this is Yoda, and the guy who kind of is overseen and has direct relationships with all of these people too. Like I think it's really interesting.
Yoda was Dooku's master.
Right, like, and Yoda also, at the full circle, also trained the very last of them in Luke too. And I think there's just a really interesting through line through those 6 movies and all those various characters. And I think that's part of what makes Luke so interesting is that he was the first one who everyone that trained Luke knew how much they had fucked everything else up, right? And like for the first time they were like going about it in a different way, right? And so I think that's part of what makes Luke and his arc so interesting, particular in Empire and Return of the Jedi, and not so much Mandalorian or Book of Boba Fett, which I don't like. But in those two movies, like I think it makes it so interesting. And so to see more of that here, I found so interesting, right? And just like we know that Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan have a really close bond because of everything that happens in the prequel trilogy after he dies. We obviously know how close Obi-Wan and Anakin are. We obviously know how much Luke kind of looks up to and reveres certainly Obi-Wan, but also Yoda. And so it's sort of interesting to see the genesis of that in a lot of ways with the Dooku Qui-Gon bond. So I just want to give a shout out to Cameron for saying that, because I also think it's a super important through line to see. And then the other thing I'll say, because it doesn't tie into to Yaddle at all, is I do wonder, and this could, I guess, be more of like my final wrap up, but I do wonder, getting to this point now with this thing, if I maybe just don't love Dave Filoni's stories that much. I think one thing I've said for, it feels like a million times in every Star Wars show we've done at this point that is related to like newer things is they veer at times too far into like fan servicey stuff, and things that are just like being done so that they can be done, without necessarily having like, I think, a lot of like cool narrative weight to them. And I think especially having now gotten to see something like Andor, which is just incredible and is just like doing none of this stuff in the same way that Dave Filoni things do, or like Book of Boba Fett does, or Mandalorian does, or Tales of the Jedi does, or Clone Wars did, or Lord knows, Rise of Skywalker did. It makes it that much more noticeable. Like, oh, I just don't think I like how he tells Star Wars stories and how he incorporates it. And like, to be fair, I'm in the minority, and like also Dave Filoni, do whatever you want. You're Dave Filoni. But I do think it's interesting that like I'm beginning to pinpoint, I just think the way that he tells his Star Wars stories, I don't vibe with as much. And it just comes down, I think, to us just having different things we really like about Star Wars and different characters we like and different reads on people, right? Like as Cameron said at the very beginning of this episode, me and Trevor do not understand the Qui-Gon Jinn love that a lot of people have. I will never get it. I will never understand it. Qui-Gon is cool. That's about all I would say for him. Dave Filoni is like the biggest Qui-Gon Jinn fan I've ever seen in my life, and I just totally don't understand it at all. And I think, you know, that
the man has taste.
It runs through a lot of his stories, right? And the same thing with like what he does with like original trilogy characters. I think there are just issues to be had there. And so I think this Tales of the Jedi was nice, if for no other reason than me being like, I think I just don't like Dave Filoni stories all that much. Certainly ones that happen like post Clone Wars. I think once he starts getting into like more modern things, once he starts getting into more like original trilogy things, I think I begin to be like, ooh, I don't know if I like this as much, because I feel like he can't help but bring his toys from the Clone Wars like toy box into the original trilogy era in ways that don't necessarily, I think, work great, like Ahsoka, like Cad Bane, like pretty much everything he's done in Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, really. Book of Boba Fett in particular just shouldn't have existed. I'll say that yet again on a new podcast. Just shouldn't even have existed.
Real quick rebuttal before we throw it back to
please,
you,
yes.
Cameron, for Yaddle. Not rebuttal against you, just and not necessarily rebuttal, but like I think Dave Filoni's love of Qui-Gon Jinn, like now when I think about it, I think specifically about, I want to say it was the Mandalorian like behind the scenes roundtable,
Yeah.
where he gives like this completely different interpretation of like the Duel of the Fates and what that means and the ending of Phantom Menace, that is so heavily influenced by like just the conversations he had with George Lucas, that is not at all what's reflected in that movie. Yes. And so like his version of Qui-Gon Jinn is a version of Qui-Gon Jinn that doesn't exist for the rest of us, because the rest of us didn't get to have those conversations with Lucas.
Yeah.
I
remember specifically having like a 45-minute conversation with you in particular about this, or when that like, behind the scene thing happened, just being like, but that is not what we got. Like that's the thing. Like everyone likes Qui-Gon, that doesn't exist.
The movie.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So Cam, take us home with Yaddle talk.
Sure. I will say, if I ever
defend Qui-Gon if you want, but
yeah, I'll defend Qui-Gon real quick. Let me put it out there this way. If I ever got an opportunity to write about anything Star Wars related, it would 100% be a like definitive novelization of Qui-Gon.
That's so interesting to me. I mean, I love it for you, but that's so interesting to me.
There's something about I don't know why. This guy who's in a movie for just once and then has shown up a couple of other times as a Force ghost. There's something about this character that I really vibed with as a kid. And and also a big part of it comes from the fact that I think I read the old Obi-Wan books that came out after Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
And
they're very good.
And they're really good. And they tell a really compelling story about a kind of man who's become jaded because of he's taken the blame of mistakes that weren't his own, and carried those with him and became kind of like calloused and jaded because of it. And then how gaining an apprentice and a kind of like son figure in his life helps him open up and reconnect back and become a better Jedi and a better person overall. And it ties into, there's so many great things that happen all over the place in like parallelism between Dooku, Qui-Gon, and Obi-Wan and like their journey and like their story that is established in that series. And getting to see a young Qui-Gon Jinn do what, like for fans of Qui-Gon Jinn who know the other like extended canon, getting to see that put on display was awesome here. I would love to because like Revan's been fully fleshed out in expanded Old Republic stuff, so no need to do that. When it comes to Qui-Gon Jinn, like I would love, like I'm not at all of the caliber of writer that should be something that I should be given whatsoever. But if I'm in the room to like spitball ideas of like putting together an outline, I would love to. I would be honored to be part of that collaborative process.
While you were saying, not to derail the Yaddle conversation more, but while you were saying that, I think I finally put like a pin on like a specific thing that Filoni does that I don't like that much. Sorry, Cameron, in advance. Qui-Gon's an element of this, which is just like he takes characters who either didn't exist before or who were just, like you said, in one movie, and he makes them so important to like the Star Wars mythology, and I just find that really annoying. Like he like, and like again, because I like Qui-Gon, but the way that he makes Qui-Gon so important to everything afterwards, just like, oh, I hate this. And the way that like he takes a character who didn't exist at all in Ahsoka and makes her so important to like Star Wars mythology, just like, oh, okay, like again, it's like the opposite of Rogue One. He like makes the things make less sense. And again, we could do a whole thing, as I've said before, about the fact that like if you try to connect to Star Wars history, it's like a lost cause. It's like trying to capture water in your hand just drips out. Like Star Wars chronology is an absolute piss take. None of it makes any sense if you think about it outside of the trilogies they're in. And that was another funny element I had watching this again. It's just like, man, none of this makes any sense when you remember the fact that 19 years from now, we're in the original trilogy and people just forget Jedi existed. Like that's like the best part of Star Wars. Like Star Wars is I'm
not gonna get it. We don't have time to get into this.
No, but like Star Wars is really, really great if you just enjoy the thing you're watching, and when you try to connect the dots, it is just such a mess and it doesn't make any sense. And we like, this is a George Lucas problem, to be fair, because he did the prequels first, but like it is just, Star Wars chronology is absolutely a nightmare, and you don't even worry about it. Don't even bother about it.
If you would pick up
the backwater planet, planet that Ahsoka came from, they knew what Jedi were. They could recognize her as Jedi. But yeah, 20 years from now, people are going to have no idea what Jedi are.
And that's the thing.
It's not that they have no idea. It's not that they have no idea. It's that there's a massive propaganda effort over 20 years.
No, I'm sorry, Cameron. Like, I'm sorry. Like, in an entire universe, like, because that's the thing. Like,
It's not a universe. It's a galaxy.
It's a universe, whatever. An entire like thing, like 20 years is 20 years either way, right? Like that's the thing. Like not everyone who was alive 20 years ago is dead now. Like they're still alive. People are like, it's just, and the same thing happened again in the sequel trilogy. It's like 30 years later, they're myth now, they're legends. It's just like, why is there a thing we do? Like we could just have people remember stuff. It's okay.
Sure. How about I put it this way?
Issue, the sequel,
how about I put it this way? What is a extremely well documented event that is taught on a regular basis to people? That
9/11?
I was just gonna say
9/11. That's a great one as well. But that, despite that, still has millions upon millions of people around the world say, I just don't think it happened, or I don't think it was as severe as that, or I don't know about that. I'm talking about the Holocaust.
Oh, but this is a great example. This is a great example. That's a great example.
The Holocaust happened.
Same thing with the
60
Holocaust,
to
the
80,
moon landing,
80 years ago, right?
9/11, any of this stuff. Is that like, this is so first off, that's a great point. It happened 90, 80 years ago, which is longer than 20. But second off,
how long did it take people to start saying, well, I don't know if the Holocaust actually happened? A lot sooner than 80 and 90 years.
Every person we meet in these universes are that person. I don't think so.
Exactly. The fact that it's
but you take an isolated incident that happened at a point in history on our planet, and then you want to expand that out to an entire galaxy of civilization.
I'm sorry,
and
Cameron,
you're like,
but like,
it's not like everybody and their mom saw a Jedi. It's just because there's stories and legends about them doesn't mean like, oh, well, you know, there's so, and also on top of that, you have a galactic-wide propaganda campaign for 20 years pumping out constant misinformation across the galaxy from trusted channels. Like, I'm sorry, but we know how misinformation has, like, it took 4 years for misinformation to totally rot the brains of people who were otherwise totally normal human beings. I hate to break it, like, it is what it is. Like, it's very reasonable.
I think the issue that I have with what you just said, though, is that, like, for any of these things you're saying, like the moon landing or misinformation nowadays, the whole point is that they're a small percentage of the population, not the whole thing. That's and like also these are bigger years. Is that like?
But there's an established effort by people to pump out the correct information. What if that didn't exist? What if it did the opposite?
My issue with the example you're given, Cameron, is that like if we were talking the prequel trilogy was 500 years beforehand, sure, that is a more conceivable time period where like people could just forget things. That's fine. 20 years is the amount of time that I was in 4th grade, and I can tell you what I was doing on a daily basis. Like that's not like I can't like just forget this shit. Despite propaganda, people tell me what like I didn't do. Like I remember this, and I was a child 20 years ago. Let alone if I was like if I was 40 or 50 or 60 now, and like I was in my adulthood. Like that's all I'm saying. Propaganda only works to a certain extent if you just can remember the thing, right? Like. That's all I'm saying is that like,
but it's also
the level of,
all right.
Look, it's just, look, we can just say it. Star Wars history is bad. It's bad. It's a bad chronology. They should have spaced stuff out more. And also in 1977, when George Lucas wrote Star Wars, he didn't think he'd spawn a 50-year universe of shit. And that was never his intention. And like, that's also okay to say. And they try to backdoor fix the things. But that's like also fine. Like he didn't have a plan. He made up as he went along. That's part of the fun of Star Wars. And its history is really dumb. And just enjoy it in its trilogy. Then it's fine. That's all you need to do about it. That's all.
But like this is also part like okay.
Let's talk about Yaddle. Let's talk about Yaddle.
Let's just dive into Yaddle. Let's wrap up with Yaddle.
I have one. I will end anything I have to say about that here right now. I think that. Logan, just because you remember what you were doing on June 3rd, 2000, whatever, when you were in 4th grade 20 years ago, does not mean that is applicable universal.
The problem with your case here, Cameron, is if you want to use the Holocaust as the example, the problem is that you're saying people that like fought in World War II 20 years ago don't remember World War II and the Holocaust. That's
right.
Like... That's
not the same thing.
Parallel.
Oh my gosh, that's not the same thing.
That would be the same thing because especially given the amount of time we go to Tatooine and had this kind of shit. But that is factual and a problem for sure. But it's messy. We don't need to like we've
this is
had
not
this
a
argument
Star Wars history podcast
multiple times.
This is not a Star Wars history
podcast.
Yeah.
I always hate when we open this can of worms because Cameron is on a very different side of this debate than
I had not realized that you were at this. I thought we had all agreed that Star Wars history is stupid if you get outside the trilogy. So I thought that was an easy thing.
I think if you want to make, I think at that point, and you make that argument, all fictitious history of any like not real life history
also
is
true.
stupid then on that level.
Also true. I guess in many cases.
I had to bring it to you, that argument you have about, hey, he years ago didn't really think this was going to span out this way. 100% solid all the way through. Hate to bring it to you. Same thing with Tolkien.
Exactly. Tolkien, it's a problem in Tolkien. It's a problem in Game of Thrones.
I am not a Lord of the Rings. I don't know who you're trying to convince here. I'm
just putting out there, there's not a fictitious universe, but also there's a massive problem with that same issue with our own real life history.
I just don't agree on that at the same time. Like, I guess for me, it's just like, again, I'm not actually, you know what? Let's talk about Yaddle.
Okay, if we want to talk about Yaddle, this is a big contentious point for me. Yaddle had a badass ending that I was hoping they would someday rectify, that they're not going to. No, and instead we got Yaddle for like 5 minutes or like 8 minutes. And it kind of like sucks that we only got her for 8 minutes. It sucks that this character has been introduced and offed in such a short amount of time, and it kind of pisses me off.
What I really like Yaddle. Horrific way she went out. Like when she actually got smacked at first, I was like, holy shit, they killed her that way? Oh my god.
Also, they made it like she lifted this thing, and it's like this really big heroic moment, and then she just gets axed anyway. It's like there's problems I have with it.
Pushed off it. That's what
I thought that would have been way better if that would have happened. If we had like, hey, wouldn't it have been a great parallel for Anakin?
Yeah.
Like creating an opening for Sidious to launch Mace Windu out the window, and then 20 like. Not that many years, but like 8 years before that or whatever, like same situation with Dooku and Sidious like being like, ha, I learned something here. And then years later being like, I got it again. And if he did it one more time, then it'd be a hat trick. Man, there's so many.
He does launch Kylo in Rise of Skywalker. So
you're right.
There would have been the hat trick. Yeah.
There's the hat trick. No, there's a lot that I have where it's like there's a very cool intricacy going on in this discussion between Sidious and Dooku that, once again, like there's so much about this that I think the format it really hurts it on a lot of levels. But Yaddle especially getting getting Yaddle being this like reflective, cool, empathetic character who is doing what she can to help out a friend who is feeling extremely disenfranchised by the institution that he's dedicated his life to, and trying to like bridge these gaps and like make people like and help a grieving friend and like all this stuff that's really, really cool about her character. And then she's off not too long afterwards. And it's like, I just feel like there's just a lot of really interesting missed opportunities that we are not going to get. And I think that one of the coolest things that ever happened was when I was reading the Star Wars comics after Phantom Menace, it was after Attack of the Clones when these comic issues came out. And it was like Yaddle being this incredibly awesome Force user who literally gives her life, like puts everything she has to prevent a poisonous gas and chemical gas from murdering an entire city of people. And she just gives her all for that. And it's a really cool idea and thought process. And it's just the Yaddle that I would have wanted out of this is not like, we only got about half of it. And that's my problem. Yaddle's a really cool character. We probably should have gotten more of Yaddle, especially because Bryce Dallas Howard did a really great job.
They got her. I like Yaddle as well, but also like for me, the bigger issue is that like, I think it's really dumb that because they got Bryce Dallas Howard and she probably didn't want to talk in some gibberish, way of speaking like Yoda, they're just like, oh, it's not like a species thing, it's just a Yoda thing, and he does it to honor his mentor, because that makes Yoda a fucking crazy person. What are you how
did you meet the man in the swamp? His mentor, meet the man in the swamp? He's never had it. He's never had it. He's so involved with his own visions. He's not.
Because that logic is like, so his mentor, you're saying like 800 plus years ago, he saw a dude and was like, I'm gonna talk like that for a millennium. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, that is crazy. Like, and like, it just makes him be like, yeah, like you said, like Yoda's always been crazy, to be fair. It's part of his charm, but like that is like some weird psychotic shit of just being like, I'm gonna talk like no one called him out on it for like a millennium. I love it.
I've come full around on it, Logan. I've come full around because now I realize Yoda commits to the bit, and I respect that.
He commits to the bit, and you gotta respect that. But it is crazy energy.
I respect that. It's like he's like, my master talks like this. Wouldn't it be funny if I talked like this too? And we both talked like this, and then my master's gone, so I just keep talking like this.
I also like the idea that Yoda, because Yoda is Yoda, no one can call him out on this shit. People are just like, oh yeah, that's a Yoda thing. And then Yaddle comes along and like, oh, it's just a Yoda thing, I guess. No one else does that, even his other species members. But he's like, but he's also the most powerful being that's ever existed. We'll just let it go, I guess. He's Yoda. What are you gonna do?
I was gonna say it's an interesting like element of bringing it back to the time conversation. I mean, it would be like, oh, this is a guy who was around during like Elizabethan times or whatever, and is just still talking like that today,
just hanging out, hanging
or
out like Middle English,
like this. Yeah, exactly. This would have been like Middle Ages kind of time frame.
What if? Oh my gosh! What if it's not to honor his master? What if he thought the way his master spoke was like funny and dumb? And so he just did it to imitate his master.
On his master.
And he's just been riffing on his master.
Very deliberately not what Dave Filoni said.
We've had a lot of problems with Dave Filoni in this episode. I may have come to his defense, but I want back on the other side of this, Dave Filoni.
Hell yeah, here we go.
I mean, my thoughts on the whole Yaddle thing are more so that it was just like, it was a weird like fake out death. And then like so she like, you know, enough time passes that you think, oh yeah, no, he killed her. Okay, that's brutal. And then like you get like this weird hero moment for Yaddle, so she doesn't.
Then it's not a real hero moment. It doesn't make any sense.
I mean,
it doesn't make any sense.
I'm saying it's a hero moment in the fact that the Star Wars music swells.
Yes, that's
and
why.
The sun is shining on her back.
That's why the sun's shining on her. She's lifting it. It's like,
but it's so heavy that like she expends the last of her energy.
It's like John Henry
not dying by a big old thing crushing her.
For a fight that lasted less than 30 seconds that she didn't even move for half of it. She was hiding for half of it. Like, I mean, it's not even I exhausted myself doing 3 things.
So what I've noticed here is that Cameron just isn't good with time because it was more than a 30-second fight. But yes,
she only fought for about 30 seconds. The rest of it, she was hiding out.
I mean,
Cameron's spicy. Cameron came in spicy in a way I didn't expect for this episode. I love it. Here we go.
I didn't come into this episode. I came in thinking, oh yeah, I kind of really like a lot of that.
Again, an hour and 15 minutes ago, you came in saying this was a terrible format for that. You 100%.
The format was. I hated the format from the get go. I did not expect to come in so hot about like a lot of feelings that I didn't expect. Like I didn't expect to come out this hot and this big of a proponent about the Star Wars timeline. It's not a good timeline. No fictional history has a good timeline.
What did we just talk for 20 minutes about then?
I came around full circle. Logan, I came around full circle. You were right. I always knew you were right, but it was because I was already on the side with Qui-Gon and you guys were against Qui-Gon and I felt I was already there and I was getting defensive, but instead of getting defensive about Qui-Gon, I got defensive about the timeline instead. It was a mistake, all right? It was a mistake. I made a mistake.
Anyway, yeah, Yaddle's death, very weird. Just in the framing of it. I'm of two minds because as we were discussing it, I was like, immediately my gut reaction was, I like that this now sets up, serves to set up Dooku's like real turn to the dark side. Mm-hmm. But then I'm like, as soon as I think about that for a second, I'm like, oh, but that's just another form of fridging a character for the sake of Dooku's character, which is a very cheap and easy writing technique,
and it's done by and she's a female alien character, basically a minority.
It couldn't have been Ki-Adi-Mundi because we see him die in Order 66.
Love Ki-Adi-Mundi.
Could have been somebody else. Shout out, we got Ki-Adi-Mundi speaking at the funeral. But yeah, it was,
you know who it could have been? It could have been the archivist who was bad at her job.
It could have been Jocasta.
But then it turns out she's a really good sleuth in figuring. What if that was the thing? She realized, hey, he deleted a planet, follows him, takes it, goes on this entire thing following Dooku, gets to it, and then he murders the archivist.
She's in Attack of the Clones. Job. It couldn't have been her.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. So yeah, it's unfortunate.
We have to see that she's
like,
bad at her job 20 years later. I know.
Exactly. Yeah. Very, very unfortunate end for Yaddle.
Mhm.
But I still, that aside, I still enjoyed the Dooku stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
And especially that last episode, the Sith Lord episode, very much was like a cool
Very good.
examination of grief of this character. And at some point when we were talking earlier in the episode, I kind of had this thought, like, I think it was probably around the time you were talking about like the hierarchy of the master mentee kind of relationships over the years. Because I think one of the other things that suffers just from Jedi in general is the suppression of emotions, which we clearly see the love that a lot of these characters have for one another over the course of the series, but they're constantly being told to like tamp that down and not embrace that. And I think like there is this like weird pseudo toxic masculinity, like we can't talk about our feelings element of it, that is like, yeah, Jedi suck in that regard. And and the fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate leads to suffering. It's like, yeah, but those like fear also leads to survival and protection. So like, calm yourself, Yoda.
One of the things I think is really interesting on that point, that's a really great point you brought up, Trevor, actually, is that, and what is the thing that leads to the survival of the Jedi Order, and what is the thing that leads to the end of the Empire, is Luke just, without hesitation, loving people around him, right? It's his love for Han and Leia, right? And most importantly, arguably, his love for his dad that turns Vader, that overthrows the Emperor, that brings down the Empire, right? Like, it is Luke openly embracing his emotions and his feelings and not listening to the advice that he gets from Obi-Wan and Yoda that actually leads to things going right? So I think that's also really interesting in terms of like, Anakin trying to suppress his feelings did not work out well, we'll go with. And Luke kind of being able to break the cycle of generational trauma in that way that stymied Dooku, that stymied, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and Anakin, and break that cycle by openly embracing his emotions and getting away from that toxic masculinity thing, is what saves the day. I think it's a great point, Trevor. I really like that.
Yay. Well, then let's go ahead and just end on that. Let's dive into the report card where we grade from A+ to F. What do you guys want to give Tales of the Jedi? Cameron, we will throw it to you first.
This is getting a C+ from me.
C+? All right.
I was bordering on a B-, but honestly, scratch it, B-. I'll give it a B-.
Okay.
Wait, nope. I just remember the first episode. C+.
Back to C+.
Back to C+.
All right.
Remember the first episode and like how fucking boring it was.
It was weird. Yeah, it was weird.
Logan, how about you? What do you want to give this?
This is such a weird thing to grade. I mean, it's one of the ones where like I genuinely have no idea what any of us are going to give it, and even Cameron giving it a C+ is sort of higher than I thought he would give it. So now it sort of like screws my own like grading up. But like I'll give like I like a B-. I think. I mean, like if I'm grading them separately, I would give the Dooku one probably a full letter grade higher than Ahsoka's, because I think hers are so uneven for me. But I think taken together, they're really interesting, right? Like if I could do one thing for this Tales of Jedi like mini-series thing, it would just simply be cut off the first episode. And I think that honestly helps it so much. I think it just flows so much better from there. Like it's in a chronological order, and I think the themes are just paced out better there. And that first episode is just such a bizarre starting point. And we've all picked on enough that like we don't need to do it again. But like I ultimately probably say, yeah, B- feels good to me. There are episodes of this that I would totally watch again, right? Like I think despite thinking the Dooku opening episode is still a little cheesy, I think his episodes build and get better and better and better as they go along. And I think that last one for Dooku in particular is like really good. And I think Ahsoka's last episode is also good. That like I would definitely potentially revisit some of these, and it helps that they're just super short, which is something that is really nice and refreshing. You can just pop it in and be done with it so quickly, and also can lead to some annoyances because there's not that much that can kind of flesh out. But I think a B- is good, and I would be curious to see them do something like this again. If anything, if they did, I would almost just want them to dedicate the whole 6 episodes to one character, right? Like, I would love to see them just do like, yeah, like a future one, maybe on Qui-Gon Jinn to show people like me and Trevor why he's really cool, right? Or do one on like Obi-Wan, or do one for, Wedge, do one for anyone, right? Like, I think just dedicating it around one character then allows the fact that they're short 15-minute installments to not be as big an issue because you're getting more time with them still.
Yeah. I very much fall in the camp of I liked the Dooku episodes, so those would have gotten an A. I did like the Ahsoka ones were fine. They got a C. So I give the thing overall a B, is where I probably land on it.
Yeah.
Because it like at no point in this, like even the first episode, I didn't think like, meh, I never would want to watch that again or something like that. But on that, I did what I like when you said like, if you could do one thing with this, it would be cut off the first episode. I love that you've given this a machete order, basically. Like the obviously the famous machete viewing order being don't watch Phantom Menace. Basically, only watch 4, 5, then 1, then 2, 3, and then go back and watch 6.
I hate that. I don't like that order though.
Yeah, not at all.
I'm saying that was the
two
machete
with all
order
of the clone-
of
replace two
the
with all
first
the
6
Clone
movies.
Wars.
Yeah. But yeah, I was never like that offended. Talking to you guys, I'm probably a little like less cool on the episode than I was otherwise, just kind of enjoying it like in a bubble for whatever it was. Because I will say also, I have like I watched the stuff close to when it first came out, then I watched it again somewhere in the last couple weeks, and then just today is the one time I didn't rewatch the first episode. So I have like watched it a couple times already, and it was fine. It I think is also just for a different audience than the rest of the episodes. The rest of the episodes, I think, have a much more mature tone.
Yes.
Whereas the first one kind of feels like some of the like, it doesn't go
like season 1 of Clone Wars.
Yeah, it doesn't go full into like Jar Jar territory or something like that. But it is much more like here's a family friendly for all ages kind of episode, versus the just straight up like
one
choking of a senator and all that stuff. Yeah,
murder in a Jedi. One thing I will say for the first episode, because we've given a lot of grief, is that I think most of that for me centered around the last like 5 minutes of that episode and the really bizarre things they do in that, and how like much you talk about how like great Ahsoka is, or whatever, and her being carried around by a saber-toothed tiger. But one element I will give a shout out to in that first episode is so much about to talk about what I love about Star Wars. It is alien and it is weird, and it's cool to just see a like species culture, even if it is sort of contradictory in terms of like respect and life and also murdering animals. But like, it's super cool to just see like an alien culture, for 10 minutes basically of that episode. And I thought that was neat. And it's really the only alienness for the most part we get of these 6 episodes. And as I think Star Wars has sort of gotten less alien over the years, I always enjoy we can just be like really weird and, embrace the fact that Star Wars is a galactic or universal story and see some other species and see their cultures. And shout out to the tribal chief and her little like menagerie of dogs just chasing after her for goodies. I really enjoyed that. I thought they were very cute.
There you go. Extra credit. Other suggestions if you like this. You've got The Bad Batch, you got The Clone Wars, you got The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, Star Wars Rebels, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Andor, and Visions.
If you liked this, just watch Andor. It's great. It's better than any of those other things that Trevor just read off. Just watch Andor. It's great.
I would agree. Andor is of those. I like a lot of Rebels too, and a lot of late Clone Wars stuff I enjoy. But yeah, Andor is certainly like a new tier. And Visions. I like Visions too. Yeah, there's definitely a mixed bag there. Anyway, extracurriculars. Anybody watching anything else on Disney Plus?
Hey, you might not have heard about this show. It's called Andor. Real good, guys. You should check it out.
You keeping up with it?
Yeah.
I have not kept up with it. I have to catch up with it for next week.
Ooh, it's real good.
I got a lot to catch up on it.
Yeah,
we're not doing it next week.
No, yeah. It's
Save time.
2 weeks to go. And
2 weeks, yeah.
I don't. Yeah, theoretically, we'll do an episode to wrap up the season, but that's also Thanksgiving week. So
yeah, that's the thing.
we'll
Like,
have to,
if we do
figure
it
out timing
Thanksgiving
of it.
week, I definitely won't be able to do it that week for sure.
Yeah.
Oh wow, it's like we had everything planned. Okay. I'm just messing.
In addition to Andor, which is absolutely continues to be a standout, I sat down and watched the making of She-Hulk as well as the making
Ooh.
of Werewolf by Night. So
Ooh.
assembled She-Hulk and Director by Night. Assembled She-Hulk is the same kind of stuff you get with most of the assembled stuff of, behind the scenes kind of interviews with the cast and crew. Director by Night was interesting because Michael Giacchino's brother is basically a documentarian and made the behind the scenes making of documentary for Michael Giacchino's Werewolf by Night. So it's a lot more of like a personal piece about Michael growing up. Like his parents are in there and like and they're doing bits and stuff. They go back to like Giacchino's high school. They show a lot of like the movies he made in high school and college and stuff like that, like showing footage of the stuff he made back in the day. So that was really cool. I highly recommend that. Assembled She-Hulk was fine. Biggest shout out to Tatiana Maslany for wearing like just in her talking head segments, just a blatant like I don't think it was Trans Lives Matter, but it was basically Trans Lives Matter shirt, just like out there right on the forefront, and being like, yeah, Disney, you want to interview me for this? All right, you're now supporting trans stuff. So yeah, shout out to Tatiana Maslany as well as Director by Night. Yeah, that is going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you guys for joining me to talk about Star Wars Tales of the Jedi and the timeline funkiness of Star Wars and that old chestnut of a debate. You can follow them. You can follow Logan at Lefty Logie, Loggy. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Logan?
Well, you can follow me there as long as it exists, as Twitter is slowly imploding rapidly imploding day by day. But yes, I will give a shout out to That Nerdy Site Show, Trevor's continuing journey through Skyrim Let's Plays. I always enjoy just having on in the background. I could watch Trevor Strikey play pretty much anything. So go check that out as well.
All right. You follow Cameron at Rev Cabot, 2 B's and 2 T's. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
No.
Okay. No shout out to Cam.
I'm joking. YouTube.com/That Nerdy Site. Go check it out.
Yeah. You follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. And yeah, it's been wild because I've been so focused on like the move that I've been like off Twitter more so than normal. Like I still am checking in certainly more than I should, but like there are whole things happening on Twitter that like are up and gone before, like in between when I'm checking in on it. So I'm just like, what the hell is going on over on Twitter right now? Yeah, weird, wild stuff. But I see, yeah, if we wanted to fork over $8, apparently we could
be
verify all of our stuff. Yeah, woo. But yes, you can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. I will give a shout out to, in addition to the Let's Plays, which are will continue to roll out because I pre-recorded many of those a month and a half ago or whatever. Still got a few more of those that will be recorded from the old house. But yeah, other than that, stay tuned to all of the fun new stuff that will happen in this new space now that we have more space to play around with when the time comes. So yeah, you follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please like, rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Where do you fall on the debate of timeline wonkiness of Star Wars? Are you on the right side of history like Logan and I, or do you think history is a fabrication like Cameron?
Hey, I came around.
Yeah.
Sit on it, Trevor.
Alrighty. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, class dismissed, and may the force be with you.
And also with you.